Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
Hello and welcome, and this is the weekly Spirit Seeker Hour that has been happening at this particular platform for over 2 years. We have over 200 shows archived, and each week we bring you different guests that work with the mind, the body, and the spirit. We bring musicians that do spiritual music that opens the mind, the body, and the spirit. You know, we have everything from yoga to acupuncture to meditation, different authors, and this is courtesy of Spirit Seeker magazine that has been published for 15 years as of the most recent issue, which is the September issue. And you can read the magazine online at www.spiritseeker.com. We are distributed as a print magazine in Chicago, St. Louis, Kansas City, and Columbia, Missouri. We are read online by people internationally and nationally. The radio show has helped us continue to grow our readership, and I just want to thank all of our advertisers, all of our writers, all of our contributors, all the different people that we have worked with in the last 15 years that have, made this possible. All right, so this issue of Spirit Seeker, I'm going to mention some of the articles. There is an article about Kripalu Yoga. September is National Yoga Month. There's also Yoga is More Than an Exercise. There is the article, The Mood-Food Connection, Enjoy Your Food, a whole book by Denise Lynn and her daughter, and I'm drawing a blank on her name, but the two of them have co-authored this book, and it is a whole different look at food that you will enjoy. Her name is Autumn, I think, and we'll be bringing several chapters of that book to you each month because Denise Lynn is just an amazing woman, and she and her daughter are changing the way people look at food, and they're offering cooking classes, etc. The other thing is that we have an article, The Highly Sensitive Person, How to Thrive When the World Overwhelms You, and then also Redefining the Peace Moment. Or the Peace Movement. So all of that, and then there is information about the guest that I am about to bring on. And my guest this evening is Julia Cameron, and I first heard about Julia Cameron in 1992, and I could not find her book anywhere in St. Louis, and I just knew I had to have it. And this is the book called The Artist's Way. And I thought, I was going away on a month-long intensive training where I was living in Connecticut, away from my children for a month, away from everything that I knew, in the 6-day-a-week processing workshop to do the work that I do, which at that time was bringing seminars and deep spiritual growth seminars to people, and we had to be processed ourselves and really move through our own things. So when I arrived in Woodbury, Connecticut, I said, "Where is your bookstore?" And I found it, and there was Julia Cameron's book. So I did the morning pages faithfully for that month. Everyone in the house, it was I rented a room in a house with 6 other people. We were all, going deeply. They all knew that until I had completed my morning pages, there was no talking to Cynde Meyer. So they all acknowledged it. We would nod when we were in the kitchen getting coffee or tea, but until I had done my morning pages, that was the routine. And it was life-changing, and I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. So can you tell there's a little emotion? So, Julia, please welcome, welcome, welcome.
It's good to be here.
Okay. You have written over 30 books, fiction and nonfiction. I learned a lot about you preparing for this interview. Your life has been a journey, as all of us, we all have our journey, but you have helped people in so many ways. I just did not realize. And you grew up in Libertyville, which I used to live in Mundelein when I was, in the early 1970s, which, of course, Libertyville was the big shopping mall place.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember that? I mean, it was built in the early 70s.
I went to high school in Mundelein. Carmel High School for girls.
Oh, my gosh. And my girlfriend lived on the lake, her family. So, this big lake in Libertyville. Or Mundelein, rather. So I grew, I know the area. And when I saw that you lived there, for the listeners, you're like, where the heck is Libertyville? And Mundelein is 40 miles north of Chicago in this beautiful, really quite beautiful, pristine area. And it's 5 miles west of Lake Michigan. And, I mean, it's just really a beautiful area. So, Julia, you started off with The Artist's Way. How did that book come to be?
Well, it's an interesting story. I was teaching the Artist's Way course for about 10 years, and there was no book. I was the book. And I met a man who was a very gifted writer, but he was blocked. And I said to him, would you like to take a creativity course with me and see if we can unblock you? And he said, where's the book?
Oh, how fabulous.
I said, I am the book. And he said, I go to Northwestern Graduate School, and everybody there can afford to have a book, and you need to make a book of this. It would help a lot of people. So I began writing the book at him, thinking, what does that jerk need to have unblocked this week?
Oh, how funny.
And
no, this is Mark Bryan.
I subsequently married him.
That's even funnier. So you totally had this whole karmic destiny thing.
Well, that's one way to put it.
Well, you know, when things are meant to be, things line up. So you were helping him remove his writer's or his whole block with writing.
Right, and he has subsequently gone on to write several books. So I would say I was successful at unblocking him.
Yes.
And the result of trying to unblock him and a few other people, I thought I was writing the book just to me and my friends. And now, of course, it's sold 4 million books. So there were many more people who were able to resonate to the book than I thought when I wrote it.
Well, and you have followers globally, and you teach workshops. You've written so many other books, and I did not realize that you had written a book on losing weight with writing. Can you? Is that the one? Oh, let's see, what's the name of that one? I have it just right here in front of me. Is that the writing diet?
Yes.
So let's just hear how the artist way, though, when here you are scribing it to this man, helping him remove his writer's block, and in the process, this whole creative thing happens. 1992, that was just a phenomenal year. And here we are, it's 2012. There are still groups all over that read your book, that have study groups, and you have this new project, Julia Cameron Live, at juliacameronlive.com. Now, listeners, we're going to hear about all kinds of things front end, and then we will take your calls, because I know some of you have already emailed, you have questions. When we get to that point in the show, we are not doing readings tonight. Cynde Meyer, Psychic Cat, is not being used in that way, but Julia Cameron will answer your questions. And when we get to that point, I'll give you the code word. So, but in the meantime, I just want to talk more about the book and how did this change your life? To go from coaching people to all of a sudden you're like this huge household word, really.
Well, it was terrifying.
Okay.
I was happy that the book was catching on, and I felt that people could form circles and do the work together. And I would get a letter, I'm with the State Department in Switzerland, or I live in the Outback, and your book has helped me to get sober. And I was afraid that if I became famous as a teacher, I wouldn't be able to make my art, that it would be overwhelming. So I ran away to England and wrote a musical. And that did a lot for my self-worth.
So you used it in a whole different way.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why Spirit Seeker interviews musicians too, because it's all part of the creative process. And so here you are, now you're living in Europe, doing a musical.
Right. And I had been brought up that I was not musical. I come from a very musical family, and I was sort of singled out as the one who wasn't musical. But when I got to Europe and began writing music, I realized there was this whole other passion of mine that had been squelched. And this is one of the reasons that I love morning pages, because when I was writing my morning pages, they said to me that I would start writing radiant songs. And I thought, oh, sure. I'm 45 years old. If I were musical, I'd know it. But sure enough, within 2 weeks, I began to be flooded with music. So I'm a great believer that we have a much higher ceiling for our creativity than we know.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Well, and this is for the listeners, if you're not familiar with the morning pages, I alluded to them, but Julia, will you please share a little bit more, because one of the exercises is remember a time when someone made fun of you for your artistic endeavors, like music, when you drew a picture or something. But if you would be kind enough to explain to the listeners, in case I'm sure we have new people, because people are constantly discovering this book.
Well, morning pages are 3 pages of longhand morning writing about absolutely anything. I think of them as being a very potent form of meditation for Westerners.
That's a very good way to describe it. And there's a shopping trip that you do to buy your perfect journal.
Suggested. That's something that people have invented.
Oh, I thought that was part of it. Okay. but the 3
I tell people, write anything 8.5 by 11.
Okay. And you cannot really do it on a computer. It's supposed to be long, handwritten.
Well, it's an interesting thing. Most of us can go much faster on a computer, and it's a little bit like your race. If you're doing it by computer, you're in a car doing 85 miles an hour, and you go, oh my God, was that my exit? Mm-hmm. And if you do them by hand, they're more slow and considered, and it's as if you're in a car doing 50, and you go, oh, here comes my exit. Oh, there's a convenience store. How wonderful.
Right.
So doing them by hand gets you in touch with deeper parts of yourself.
Well, and you were coming to St. Louis, Missouri. And
yes.
The dates on this workshop are Friday evening, October 5th from 7 to 10, Saturday all day from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and on Sunday, October 7th, 10 a.m. to noon. And can you tell us just a little bit about what people can expect from this wonderful weekend workshop with you?
Well, I think they can expect to start digging into their own creativity. And I find that when I teach a weekend workshop, it's very intense, and it's very inspirational for people. So they will go through looking at their past demons, they're looking at their current dreams, looking at what they want their future to be like, and they'll be given tools which will allow them to move into the direction they really want.
So this is a very deep workshop. I can hear it already.
Well, we hope so.
And, are you teaching a lot, or I just have this feeling that we're very fortunate to have you coming to St. Louis right now?
Well, I teach it every Sunday at Unity Church.
Okay.
And I love teaching. It's very powerful. I don't know that 7 till 10 sounds like a little bit late on Friday night. It might be better if we did 7 till 9 so that people could sleep before they came in for Saturday's session.
Okay, I just went with the ad, and listeners, there is an article about Julia Cameron's workshop in St. Louis in the September issue of Spirit Seeker magazine, and you can see the ad on page 10 and the article, or I said it backwards, the article on page 10 and the ad on page 11. So all of the information is in the September issue of Spirit Seeker, and for information, you can contact Stacy at 314-965-6133. So, Julia, getting back to your newest project, Julia Cameron Live. What is happening with this? Because I just signed up for your blog. Or I think that's what it was. You have a newsletter that you offer, and then you have the new project. Well, I don't know how new it is, but Julia Cameron Live. Can you tell the listeners about all of this?
Well, one of the things that I realized is that I love to teach, but people can't always afford to come to Santa Fe for 12 weeks to study with me. And so Emma Lively, who's my collaborator, suggested that I should teach out of my living room, just the way I had at the very beginning, 20 years ago. So we brought cameras in, and I taught the artist's way, a segment at a time in sort of bite-sized chunks, if you will, so that people could study at their own pace. They could look at the online show at breakfast, or maybe they would get around to it at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And the object of it was to teach the book with the experience added of the 20 years that I've taught since I wrote the book.
Wow. So all of this is at your website, JuliaCameronLive.com, and that's JuliaCameronLive.com. And, you are going to be amazed when you hit this website. I mean, Julia, I did not realize until preparing for this interview that you have written 30 books, fiction and nonfiction. You're a novelist, you're a playwright, you're a songwriter, you're a poet, you're a teacher, you're an inspirer. And I really like how a quote from you is, artists have always mentored. I just do it on a wider scale.
Yes, and I feel that way really strongly.
Well, I mean, you've just given us all a gift. So, listeners, we will now take as many call-ins as we can. Just all you have to do is press 1 on your phone, and my producer will let me know that there is a person with a question. And do we have Nate, if we have a question right now, I think we just go ahead and bring them on. But just let me know, and we'll take as many questions as we can. So, the other thing is as Julia was, describing, the way she teaches the classes from her living room, these segments that have been created. This is the beautiful part about Blog Talk Radio. The minute this interview is finished, it will be archived, and we have actually way more listens after hours, depending on the show, but we get stats every week. So I just really want to remind everyone that all they have to do is send people to spiritseeker.com, click on the Blog Talk link at the top, and then you can have, your friends and family listen to this interview as well. Okay, so Julia, with everything that's changed since 1992, and here we are, 2012, and, in 1992, we still, yes, we had the S trainings and all that stuff that happened, back in the day, so to speak. And then in 1992, it just felt like there was like an expansion with more and more books, and now with technology, like here you are live from your living room, and people can have the intimacy of your teachings in a whole new way, and you're still on the road, doing this, leaving Santa Fe, coming to the Midwest, and just really giving us a treat. What do you feel the biggest shift in conscious awareness? Like, you probably have all different ages in your workshops. What are you seeing that has changed significantly since 1992?
Well, I want to say nothing. I think that there's a hunger for creative expansion, and that when I wrote the book in 1992, it tapped a vein, and people began to work with the tools and form groups. And now I'm teaching, and it's 20 years later, and people are still coming with their hopes and their dreams and their blocks. So I think the internet has actually helped many people to start writing. Email is it's not, quote, real writing, so people feel free to do it. And I think when I get them writing longhand, they begin to have an awakening. I think of it as people are building a spiritual radio kit, and with the morning pages they're sort of saying to the universe, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, this is what I want more of, this is what I want less of. And then another tool is something called an artist date, which is a once-a-week solo festive expedition to do something that interests you or enchants you. And
I forgot about this part. Just if you would share some of the things that people have shared with you about what their artist date looks like. I mean, I forgot this piece, but this is fabulous.
Well, people will come to me and they'll say, I want to get a pedicure. Is that an artist date? And I'll say, probably so. I want to go see the Folk Art Museum. Is that an artist date? Yes, probably so. I'm going to go poking into galleries. Is that an artist date? Yes, probably so. I want to go sit under a tree and just listen for an hour. Is that an artist date? Yes, probably so. It's whatever is enchanting or interesting to you yourself. When I lived in Manhattan, I used to go to a travel bookstore, and you would walk in and you would just feel the enchantment of foreign lands. It was a bookstore called The Complete Traveler, and I found that I got a book there on Magellan, and I ended up writing an entire musical about him.
Wow. So I mean, and this came from your morning pages.
Well, there are three basic tools. The first one is morning pages, and that's hard work, and people are all too willing to do it because we understand working on our creativity. It's much harder to get people to go out and play and do the artist date. And I say to them, we have the expression, the play of ideas. That's a literal term. But people don't think that having fun can engender ideas, and yet it does enormously. And then the third tool, which when I wrote The Artist's Way, I put it in week 12. And now I put it in week 1, and that is go for a 20-minute walk twice a week. And that will help you to integrate the insights that you're getting.
Interesting. You know, that month-long training that I mentioned at the beginning of the interview, I'll never forget, we were in Jiminy Peak, Massachusetts this one weekend of the training, and we were assigned, we were given the instructions to be in silence from Saturday at 10 o'clock until after breakfast the next morning, which was a designated time where we all came together, and there was like 200 of us.
This is an assignment that I give people every time I teach.
Well, and so but with this roommate that we really did not know, before we went to breakfast, we were to take a 20-minute walk, just like you described, in nature, in silence, with this person, like, you could tap them and point to a bird or tap them, but there was no talking, and then total silence in the breakfast room. It was one of the most powerful things I've ever done. So in the silence and in the using all of the senses, which is what you're encouraging with everything that, with your exercises, I mean, this is life-changing.
Well, I find that people cure their depressions. A lot of times when people are blocked, they're sad. They feel that they aren't fully living their life. They have an instinct that there's something more to living than what they're doing. And then when you start taking them with morning pages, artist dates, and walks, people begin to wake up. And then you give them a night of silence. Or another tool which is very powerful, and I'll mention it even though I know it's controversial, and that's a tool called media deprivation. And,
go ahead.
I ask people to stop reading, to stop listening to talk radio, to stop watching television, to put themselves into the silence of their own creativity. And people hate it. They're like, oh my God, Julia, I can't do that. I'm addicted to reading. I read myself to sleep every night. And I say, well, for 1 week, you're not going to do that. You're going to write yourself to sleep at night if you need to. And people come back after a week of doing this, and they go, I was so fascinated by my own thinking, I had no idea I was so interesting.
I can remember, my children are now in their late, 26, 24, and soon to be 25, and 14. But I can remember the older two, there was this Berenstein Bear book where you put away the TV for a week. There was just no TV for a week, and you went outside and you played. And, I remember my children saying, no TV, let's do it, Mom. And I've never been a big TV watcher anyway, so, but it was fascinating what came to fill the space that normally had just been mindless, like hours would pass or whatever. And
well,
but
we're addicted to other people's opinions and other people's versions of our story. And so when we do the media deprivation, we're sort of cast back onto ourselves.
Right. I'm a Feng Shui Consultant, and, one of the exercises that is recommended in, Simple Abundance is where, they suggest that you take every picture off of your walls, every knickknack off of your tables, and you just live in total, the blankness for 30 days. And then, you look at your space again after 30 days, and you look at your stuff, and you really think, do I really want to put that back in the same place? And, I remember feng shuiing a client's house who had lived in the same apartment for 9 years, and she was doing a complete makeover. We were working as a team with an interior designer, and, and I was doing the feng shui component. And I remember her saying, well, should I leave, and the apartment complex was painting the walls, and she said, should I leave the nails in the same spots when the painters come? And I said, well, why would you do that? Well, so I know where to put my pictures. I said, you're getting all new everything in this space. I said, the last thing you would want is to put your stuff back in the same place, because then it's going to feel exactly the same. I said, that's what the whole exercise and the whole creative process is about. And, I'd forgotten that whole thing until I went to my cousin's house, who's this amazing artist. And she had her same, she moves her things around, but she took all of her pictures down except for maybe 4 pictures. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, I'm getting ready to create. And she said, I needed blank space around me to bring that creative process to me. And she said, I'm working in clay. And she said, I've been working in oil. And she said, in order to start sculpting, I need more space around me to work in that medium. And I was just, I mean, at first it was just like, where's my favorite picture? And then I realized that even artists, I mean, especially artists, I think, have to find that quiet space, like whether it's, internally and externally, is what you're, with all of your exercises, you're going internal, external, changing the rhythm, changing the patterns. I mean, it's a wonderful process, Julia, and I'm just so grateful to you. And I know you've just changed lives, but I don't know, it's just fascinating, isn't it, how changing one little thing can just open up whole doorways.
Well, I last year wrote a book called The Prosperous Heart. I wrote it with Emma Lively. And in it, there's an exercise on decluttering.
Yes. Would you like to share that with us? I mean, I'm a big one for letting stuff go.
Well, the idea was you start out with a plastic trash bag, and you walk through your house for 15 minutes, and you declutter. And people are amazed at how much clutter they have and how 15 minutes of cleanup can start them on a path towards a more radical cleanup.
We covered that book in Spirit Seeker, but I normally get a review copy. I forgot, but I remember seeing that. I forget who the publisher was, but somehow or another it came across my screen. And
yes, it's Tarcher Penguin Putnam.
Yes. I don't even know how. We work with publishers all across the USA and internationally. A lot of the authors just don't have an entry into the U.S., and so we're working more and more with Canadian and European authors. But some of the other books, that you have written, the Walking in This World, I did not know that you had the loss. And if you want to talk about this, fine. And I had a brother who committed suicide, and I thought, okay, this is, I know what our family's journey was with it. I mean, that's not the same as a son. But you wrote about this, and I was not familiar with this book. Would you like to share with our listeners about this?
Well, I'm not sure what your question is.
I guess the question is, you shared your experience, and then you also gave inspirational lessons about grief and loss. So is it writing exercises once again to help people get in touch with their grief and loss?
Well, one of the reasons that we call them morning pages is that we can make a joke about spelling it two different ways.
Okay, I forgot this too.
And they are, in fact, morning pages. And people find that their grief moves up and out through their hand.
That makes sense. So this is another book, Walking in This World. And another one that you wrote is called Vein of Gold, where this is like, it sounded like a journey to your creative heart, which expands on the different experiences that you've had. If you want to touch on anything, just jump in. And then but I am interested in the writing diet, because I remember Sandra Ray, this friend of mine years ago, who wrote The Only Diet There Is, and she said forgiveness and getting this stuff out of you. And I have not read this book, but it's on my list to seek and find. Is that what you did, is to, like, writing about what you're holding on to, which is the emotional weight?
Yes, exactly. And
that's what I figured when I read that.
The emotional weight, you start to release your physical weight.
See,
one of the things that happens when I teach is I often tease people and say we should do Polaroids before and after, because people look physically so different. You begin to realize that the term enlightenment is a literal term. People take on a sort of glow as they begin to get in touch with their creativity.
Well, and it's the clearing. I don't even know how to explain it, but what you're describing is just the well, it's not just, that's minimizing it. Once you start to get the things up and out and then you see it, I think that it just makes it lighter inside.
Yes. I would agree with that.
Yeah, and I think that's what my cousin was, just saying, is that I'm familiar with all these and they've been my friends, but in order to create something new, I need to go into the void, and I think that's the scariest part for people is walking into the void, and that's what changing routines does, is it takes you out of the normal structure and creates a new rhythm.
Well, and I think that the Artist's Way book is a very gentle mentor, and it says, I'm going to give you a few simple tools, and if you just work with these tools, you're going to have a spiritual awakening. It's sort of like, in Hatha Yoga you stretch and energy flows through you. It's the same thing with the Artist's Way. You do a few simple tools, you do a few tasks every week, and as you move into your creativity, energy begins to move through you.
That's a good analogy. That's an amazing analogy. It's interesting, one of the guests that I interviewed for National Yoga Month, which is this month, last week, was she had a lady come to her studio who'd had hip surgery, and she came to strengthen her hip. And what she said is that not only did yoga strengthen her hip, but it changed the way she rode her horse. It changed the way she looked, at life. I mean, it was just exactly what you're talking about, these energy flows, everything. She came seeking pain relief, and the next thing you know, her whole life had shifted.
Right. Well, people come to me and they say, your book changed my life. And I say, no, you changed your life. But it's always the same sentence. It's always, your book changed my life.
Well, when I read your book in 1992, what I didn't share front end, but now I feel drawn to share, is that I was going through a divorce. And I had my divorce scheduled, my court date, right in the middle of that month. And so your morning pages, doing the morning pages every single day before I started that intense training, and then flying back and getting divorced in the middle of that month, and then leaving my children and going back to this program because, I couldn't do the work that I was doing at the time unless I took this month-long program, people from all over the world. And everybody knew about my morning pages. They knew, because I carried your book around. They all knew in the household that, Cynde Meyer doesn't talk in the morning, and they saw the shift in me. I mean, there were so many, shifts that month. But, starting your book at that particular point, I mean, there was just no accident that there I found it the very first day I arrived in this little tiny town, and I would take those walks and I would find babbling brooks, and it was just this fascinating time. And then I went to New York City one weekend and I took myself on an outing. I went to Boston, and I would just find creative mediums wherever I would go. I mean, it was just all part of that journey. Now I want to find I have one of the oversized books, and I tried to find, the coffee table edition, the beautiful one with the ribbon in it, and it's not where it's supposed to be. So that's one of my things on my seek and find. I will find where that book has gone to, because, I love your book and loved it so well that I had, my paperback was just pretty beaten up. So I gave myself that as a gift, and someone has moved it to a wrong spot. But, here you are, 1992, here we are, 2012, and I must say I just loved your answer. Nothing's changed. We all still have, we're all wanting to be better, better people and contribute to the planet, but the whole thing is still, the process is still the same, and I mean, and the music part, I mean, do you still work with the music at all, or are you just so busy with everything else?
Well, what I've done is take piano lessons.
Oh, fascinating.
I've written 3 musicals and 2 children's albums, but I never knew how to play the piano. And so I've started taking piano lessons. and I've finished book 1, and I'm tiptoeing into book 2.
Now, these are the children's music books, or what are these music? What are you talking about?
The music books are children's music books, teaching little fingers to play.
Okay.
And I'm teaching my little fingers to play.
That's fabulous. That's on my bucket list. I have this piano that sits in my living room. My son took lessons for 10 years. And then, I don't know, he broke his wrist, and we never went back to it. And the piano's sitting there, and I look at it, and that's always been on my list, to learn how to play the piano. And so you've done it.
Well, it was on my list. And I think the thing that happens with teaching is that you teach unblocking and you become unblocked yourself. So, when I think of that, I've written a crime novel and published that. I've written a short story collection and published that. I've written a romantic comedy and published that. All of these things are gifts of teaching.
Fabulous. Just fabulous. So what's still on your bucket list here? With your creativity? Let's hear.
I have a play opening in New York this year, and that's on my list.
Now, what is the play?
It's called Love in the DMZ.
Wow. Can you tell us just a little bit about that?
It's the story of a husband in Vietnam and his wife left alone with their 2 children in Kansas.
Wow. This is going to bring back a lot of memories for people in a way that, that was one of the wars that, it was actually the first war, as we both know, when people came home and it just wasn't the same. We used to cheer our veterans. That was Vietnam was this thing that no one wanted to talk about.
Right.
That should be fabulous. Okay, I mean, not fabulous, but you know what I mean. It will just help a lot of people with healing to remember and bring back, different memories in a lot of different ways. So that's wonderful. And New York, I mean, Broadway. I mean, that's fabulous.
Not Broadway, off-Broadway.
I'm sorry, I knew that. But chances are it'll probably come to Chicago. St. Louis does not get, Chicago gets so much, and there's a friend of mine who writes everything about what's happening in Chicago, and but New York City, I mean, what a place to start.
Right.
That's fabulous. Okay, and what else do you think about, because you're inspiring us. I mean, you're inspiring me. I mean, I kept looking at that piano recently, and I thought, am I too old? I'm not too old, but do I have time, and will I be devoted?
It takes 20 minutes a day.
Seriously, that's all that's like meditation. There you go.
Right.
20 minutes a day. Okay, all right. Julia, you were just fabulous. And I'm just going to remind listeners that Julia will be coming to the Midwest. Spirit Seeker is throughout the whole Midwest, and she will be here on Friday evening, October 5th, all day Saturday, October 6th, and on October 7th from 10 until noon. The workshop is going to be held at the Frontenac Hilton in St. Louis. And this class is limited to 100 people, and if you are to register, here is the phone number, 314-965-6133. And this is brought to you by Stacy Hunziker, who is the publisher of Yoga and Spa magazine in St. Louis. And, Stacy's done a lot for the St. Louis community with, really, going the extra mile to bring different seminars to St. Louis. She has the Extraordinary Speaker series through the Yoga and Spa magazine, and just call her. There's different, I'm not sure if you need to come all weekend or if you can just come on Friday evening, but I'm not sure. But call Stacy, and she can answer all of those questions. We have just a few more minutes, Julia, and, you've written so many other books. Is there another one that you would like to share with our readers, or this is your time, and, you're helping all of us. So whatever you would like to, we have about 10 more minutes, whatever you would like to share with our listeners.
Well, I'd like people to try and get a copy of my book, Mozart's Ghost. It's a romantic comedy, and it sort of delves into spiritual waters.
Mozart's Ghost. Okay, so can you tell us just a little bit more?
Well, it's a woman who is a spiritualist, a medium, and she falls in love with a concert pianist, but she's afraid to let him know her secret life.
The spiritualists, there's in Indiana, I don't know if you've ever heard of Camp Chesterfield. That was my first introduction to spiritualists. There's a fifth spiritualist church, in St. Louis, and they're spiritualists. They're all over, and that's where I first saw a woman read billets, as a clairvoyant, and this was a campus. So, where everybody on the campus that lived there was a psychic medium in some way doing spirit's work. And I bet this is a fabulous book. Now I want to read this one, too.
Yes, I think you'll like it.
Mozart's Ghosts.
Mozart's Ghost. It's published by St. Martin's Press.
Okay, all right. I need to, we can put some of these in Spirit Seeker. I'll do more for you. I just didn't realize until this interview all the different things that you have done. And, we have readers all over, so we'll help in any way that we can. I belong to a writer's, I haven't been in a while. I broke my leg in January, and I'm just now, it's just taken a while to get back to everything. But there's this group that is called Shut Up and Write, and it's kind of, a harsh line. But what we do is we all chip in and rent this conference room, and it's once a month where everybody chips in, and you get there and you say hello to everybody, and then no one talks the rest of the time until lunch. And then we leave at lunch, and we can talk at lunch, and then we come back, and everybody writes. It's like I've written so much for, Spirit Seeker, for the websites, for the different projects we've done, and, that's all we can do during that time is write. And I don't know why they came up with it. It is good. It is, and it's like all these creative minds all together. So it's just really inspirational. Okay, we do have Stacy Hunziker, who is waiting to come onto the line and talk for a moment. So, Stacy, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay,
hi,
great.
Stacy.
Hi, Julia. Hi, Cynde.
Hi.
I know we only have a few minutes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But no, can you clarify, can they come on Friday evening only, or is it a Friday evening, all day Saturday, and then Sunday morning?
It is a weekend workshop.
Okay.
And it is now, it's $325 for the entire weekend, and it will be at the Frontenac Hilton, right at Highway 40 in Lindbergh. So very accessible, and anyone coming from out of town can, book a room there, and or if you live in St. Louis, book a room anyway, and just make it a sacred weekend for yourself with Julia Cameron. And I didn't get to hear the whole show. Did anybody bring up the Prosperous Heart book and how fantastic it is?
Oh,
we talked.
Thank you.
Yes, we did. And if you want to add something, you can.
I just got a big box delivered to my front door. And
good.
I opened up the big cardboard box.
Well, I know there are several groups going on in St. Louis that are working through the Prosperous Heart. I have been doing it on my patio in the mornings just by myself, and it's just wonderful, 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 wonderful. I think I'm in chapter 7 on forgiveness, working through the exercises in the back. So really great.
I opened the cardboard box, and in it were 2 awards that the Prosperous Heart had won for Book of the Year from a group called the Visionary Awards.
Oh, wow, that's great.
That's fabulous.
So I was very pleased that the book was finding its way.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful book. So we're really thrilled that you're coming to St. Louis, October 5th, 6th, and 7th. And Emma is coming also.
Yes, that's right.
That's great.
Yeah, Emma travels with me when I teach, and we work together on musicals.
That has to be so lovely to be able to travel and have the interchange of ideas, and to have the play on Broadway. So you co-created that together?
No, the play was myself, but
Okay.
Emma's the one who took it to the producer, and she found the home for it.
Fabulous. Well, this has just been a treat, and Stacey, I don't know if you were on. I thank you for all that you're doing for the Midwest, for St. Louis with your magazine, with the the different speakers you're bringing in. I mean, what a treat to have Julia Cameron in St. Louis. I mean, it's just an amazing treat.
It's huge. It's really great.
It is. And I shared before, earlier. I just had no idea that, there were so many books that you've written, and then with your love of music and just et cetera. So this is just great. And Stacey, I know I gave the phone number 314-965-6133. Is there anything else you want to mention on how you would like people to contact you?
No, that is the way. Call me and we'll reserve your space for the weekend, and then we can help if you want to, if anybody wants to have a hotel, a room there also to make it a, just a really great weekend for yourself. I think even if you live in St. Louis, book a room for the weekend, really prepare to, go deep in the weekend with Julia.
Well, it sounds fascinating and it sounds wonderful. And Julia, I thank you so much for being my guest this evening. And
you're very welcome.
Oh my goodness! You just inspired me in so many ways, and I'll be looking. There's several of your books that I now want to go and seek and find. And just thank you so much for sharing all of the different ways that this book has helped so many.
You might enjoy The Right to Write, which is a writing book. It sounds like you're in a wonderful position with this group of yours.
The Right to Write. Now, I did not see that. Okay, now this is.
That's another Penguin Putnam book.
Okay, all right. It's so interesting with the accessibility of the internet now. There's just everything's changing, and I had a consultation with a person who's written, a lot of different books, and she was actually a guest on my show, and then she, I had a consultation with her, and she was saying that the new books, I don't know if you've heard this. She attends some conference in San Francisco each year, and she's now 65, 70, right in that range. And she said that the first time she went, she was so intimidated because even though she had written 30 books, when she came into the publishing world of today, she said everything is so different. She says with self-publishing, with the internet, with online, with the video conferencing, with everything. And she said that the new books, the way that they will almost all, with our Nook and Kindle, people, that's how they're getting a lot of their books now. She said that there will be video links, where it's already done in other parts of the world, where as you're reading along, it'll talk about an exercise, like one of the exercises that you've talked about, and then the next thing you know, there'll be a link to someone saying, yes, I did what Julia recommended, and I stopped reading my, book before I went to sleep, and this is what happened. And it's like a new way. I mean, this is what they're saying that publishing is going to be like now, because, magazines are all going online. Spirit Seeker's been online for almost 12 of the 15 years that we've been published, which is pretty much ahead of the game for a lot of the magazines. But this is just the way it is. The 20 and 30-year-olds rarely buy books anymore. They would rather pay and have it downloaded to their iPad. What do you think about all this?
Well, I think we're in an exciting new era. And I think that people are finding information to be more accessible. And I don't know about you, but I consider Google a miracle.
Oh, I do too. Anything you want to find, there it is. I mean, that, the school system where my 14-year-old attends, I was older when I had him. They are now allowing the smartphones and iPhones, they're doing a pilot test in the middle school and one of the high schools where they can have their phones in class, because when they need to learn something, all they have to do is do the search. Exactly what you're talking about, Google and everything. And, you know, they've been trying to keep these cell phones, you know, out of the schools, and it's just ridiculous because, you know, here we are driving in a car and we want to know something. Where do we go? Google.
When you pull over?
No, when you have a kid in your car, if you say, you know, what's the blah, 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 or there's a conversation in the car, I mean, all three of my kids, they go straight to their phones. I mean, encyclopedias, I remember, you know, I remember the family encyclopedias. So everything's just so different. You can't keep up with, you know, the technology and all the knowledge. But I agree, Julia, like, Google was probably the greatest invention that anyone ever gave us. You know, outside of, if we're going to really do fun things with Pandora and, you know, now the Facebook, you know, Spotify. I mean, it's just like all of a sudden we're seeing into other people's lives, you know, like their music lists, you know.
Well, and Julia, and now we can get Julia live. Your videos are up, Julia, right?
Yeah, we talked about that earlier.
You did? Yeah. I mean, that's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah. Right, from her living room, which is where she started with this teaching process. So okay, Julia, we have one last words of wisdom. What would you like to say in closing from this, you know, wonderful time we've spent here tonight? Words of wisdom.
I'd like to say get up in the morning about a half hour early and write 3 pages of longhand morning writing, and that will change your life.
Amen. It changed mine. 8.5 by 11
sheets of paper. I remember. Oh my gosh! I just, you know, it's been a while, but I'm re-inspired, and I'm just delighted that you're coming to St. Louis. So, Stacy, thank you for all of your efforts and, you know, allowing us to have this privilege of Julia coming. And Julia, thank you so much for being my guest this evening.
You're very welcome.
Okay.
Bye,
okay. Good night, everyone.
Julia.
We'll be back next
Tell
week.
Emma
Same
hi.
time. Okay.
I will.
Okay. Good night, everyone. We'll be back next week, and I will be interviewing a person who has written a book on highly sensitive people. Her name is Dr. Elaine Aaron, and she will be teaching a workshop in the Chicago area. So if you have ever felt, it's really more of a feeling thing, that you are highly sensitive and you walk into rooms and are bombarded with, you know, feelings, Dr. Aaron addresses all of this, and so we're in for another delight next week. But send the link to this interview to your friends and family and let people know about her coming to the Midwest, because this is just, you know, she's coming from Santa Fe and spending time with the Midwest. So thank you again, and I'll be back next week. Have a wonderful week. Namaste.
Blog Talk Radio, where millions of hosts and listeners gather.